Restaurant used fake priest to hear workers' confessions. Okay, a lot of questions. Why is he hiring a fake priest? Why does he need confessions? What's happening? My friends on the left, my progressive friends are like, this is what's wrong with America. We are involving faith in government, faith in workplace. No, this has zero to do with faith. Hang on. This is about as sketchy of a bad leadership story that I think I've ever shared. The owners of a Northern California taqueria chain will pay $140,000 in back wages and damages after federal investigators found they used a fake priest to elicit confessions of wrongdoing from their employees. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to get through this without laughing because this gets worse. Labor officials began looking into allegations that employees weren't being paid overtime wages at the Sacramento area chain Taqueria Garibaldi. As investigators contacted employees, they learned that a man who was acting as a priest had been introduced by the owner, and I quote, to get the sins out of the restaurant workers. I'm sorry. I'm trying so hard not to laugh. To get the sins out of them. Now, I will tell you, coming from the evangelical world, this doesn't feel very Catholic to me. This feels very charismatic Pentecostal, but like snake handling type stuff. That's the frame this is in for me. But I go on. The priest began the meetings with prayer. Labor Department investigator Raquel Alfaro testified last year. The fake priest then asked employees whether they were loyal to the owner, Eduardo Hernandez, and whether they had ever stolen from him. Now, this is from an employee. This is testimony. As soon as the confession started, I found the conversation to be strange and unlike normal confessions. You think? Where I would tell a priest about the sins I wanted to confess. The priest mostly had work-related questions, which I thought was strange. So, okay, I feel so bad for these fine folks. They go along with this because they're afraid of losing their job, and, you ready for this? They were threatened with being deported. So they are now essentially blackmailed into meeting with this priest, but they think it's a real priest. And they are obviously of the Catholic faith, so they're used to confessions. And so these poor people are in there telling this fake priest their sins, and he doesn't even care. He's asking them work-related questions. Hernandez, the owner, told another employer that they needed to help him by telling the federal investigators that they worked only 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and asked them to manipulate their time cards. Can you imagine how confused these people are? The same guy that's hired a priest to get the sins out of the organization is telling them to lie to federal investigators. Oh, my goodness. Woo! Now, this is where I can't laugh anymore. This is where it gets really, really weird. The restaurant management also threatened employees beyond the adverse immigration consequences, which is essentially deporting them, and used pooled tips to pay managers. So they raided the tip jar and gave it to managers. Another employee told investigators that one of the managers, Alejandro Rodriguez, would not let us sit down and eat our lunch, forcing them to retreat to the refrigerators to hide and eat their lunch. You ever been in one of those restaurant refrigerators? Let me tell you something, folks. That's no joke. So what happened to the fake priest, you wonder? I was wondering. Well, authorities haven't been able to find the fake priest. We don't know where he is. But federal investigators did confirm with the Diocese of Sacramento, that he was, in fact, not a real priest. So we know that somewhere in the Sacramento area, a guy is driving around with a priest outfit in his trunk. And, oh, my gosh. So why do I share this? Because this is an extreme situation. An extreme situation. there are so many manipulative leaders out there. And I will tell you, for those of you who watch and listen to me, and you may not be in an hourly role, but you know friends and family members that work in these kind of hourly roles, and you've got situations going on where people are feeling intimidated and threatened, and this kind of craziness is going on. I mean, you got to come alongside them and walk them through this situation. You know, I hear a situation like this, and here's what makes this really, really awful, is because these are illegal immigrants, and this guy has hired them knowing their status, and yet uses it to threaten them and blackmail them. And that's a problem. But let's pull out of this crazy story for a moment, and let's just look at why so many people are leaving companies. Because it's not this egregious, but it's the same source. You have leaders of all levels. So we're talking about a small business leader here. We're talking about this on the corporate level, who, because we've got this massive gap in our employment situation where we've got more jobs available than we have people who are signing up to say, I want to work. So it's over 10 million jobs available, right at about 8 million people unemployed. A lot of people don't want to work. And so it's created this environment where you've got stressed out leaders, stressed out managers. The leadership above them are pouring more and more and more on top of them, saying help is on the way. The help doesn't show up. And you've got leaders and managers that are stressed out, frayed out, and they're trying to just keep it all on the table. It's like the idea of if I took a big old cup of marbles and I dumped them on this seemingly flat desk, I'm telling you, the marbles aren't going to stay put. What would I be doing? I would immediately aggressively get my arms out. I'm trying to keep all the marbles on the table. I'm giving you that image because I'm not excusing this in the leadership world, but I am trying to help some of you understand that a lot of the mistreatment and the unfair treatment that's being reported is because you've got leaders that are trying to do this and they're desperate. And when a leader becomes desperate, they start creating dysfunction. And I'm telling you this because there are a lot of you out there who are going, I'm in a dysfunctional situation. It's not as abusive as that story, Ken, but what do I do? And I want to make sure you understand something. There are times where you can actually lead up and help your leader get out of this posture of trying to hold on to the marbles because they're so desperate, they're unhealthy, and unhealthy, desperate people don't make good decisions. And I'm not defending this type of a leader, but I'm also saying they're not a bad person. In most cases, they just are in a bad situation and they've not been trained. They aren't being supported. Thus, they can't support you. And so they are bad leaders by description, but it doesn't mean they're a bad person. So if you could walk in on this silly little metaphor that I've given you, and you were trying to relieve me, we couldn't let the marbles drop. And I was holding on for dear life, scrambling, and tense and desperate. How would you help me get control of the situation and ease the tension? I want you to at least try before you just walk with no job to help your leader get rid of some of that tension. Let's see what happens.